Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We spoke earlier today to Andrew McIlwain, who's the CEO of Investigator Resource. They're a silver explorer developer in Australia and trying to take advantage of the current buoyant silver market. We talked to him about his project, and if you want our thoughts and opinions on that, and indeed the company itself, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club. You can also find company reports on there, commentary from market experts from around the world on a variety of commodities. We've got training courses. We've got summaries of other interviews that we've done. We've also got a thriving community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other in a nice, safe environment. If you go now, there's a 7-day free trial. And of course, we'd love your feedback too. So do leave your comments below, give us a like. And if you want to see what we talked about with Andrew, take a look in the description below. Andrew, how are you doing, sir?
I'm fine. Thanks, Matthew. Great to talk to you.
Lovely. So where in the world are you?
I'm in Melbourne, which is moving into the sunny summer season and sitting in the COVID capital of Australia.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's where my cousins are based, Melbourne, the culture capital of Australia, they tell me.
Well, certainly the culture. The problem or the challenge for us this year is the AFL Grand Final for the first time in 112 years is not going to be played in Melbourne.
Oh, boy. So what are they doing then? Are they playing it at all?
They are. It's a shortened season, down to, I think, 17 rounds, and they've had a shortened games, and they're going to play it in Brisbane, in fact.
Oh my God! Where I was born. Okay. Well, look. That's obviously very, very important news, but not as important as what we're about to talk about, which is your company. So we've not spoken before, and we've not heard the story before. So why don't you kick off? Give us a 1-minute overview for people new to it, and we can pick it up from there.
Sure, look, no problem. I'm the managing director of Investigator. Investigator Resources, an ASX-listed company. The ticker's IVR. Our prime asset is the Paris Silver Project, which sits in South Australia, in a reasonably accessible but remote area of South Australia. Current resource and current Australian silver price, we have $1.5 billion worth of silver in the ground. We're also quite keen on seeking other assets to diversify our risk, and we also have some ground in Tasmania as well.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks for that. So it's a relatively new story in some ways, but also it's been around for a while in the sense that first maiden resource 2013, you updated 15, updated in 17 again. So is this a case of just taking advantage of the silver environment and trying to reignite the story?
The history is that the company was able to generally raise just enough money to do the next drill program, and as you say, successive resources. We parked the project for a while we focused on some other copper gold opportunities with Oz Minerals. Recent silver price allowed us to raise more money than we need to do this project, so we're not hamstrung as they have been in the past. We're going to drive the project through its feasibility study, make a decision whether we mine it or not.
Okay, so you mentioned, so what's the connection with Oz Minerals?
So we formed a joint venture with them. We had a very, very exciting deep iron oxide copper gold target, and Oz Minerals came in to drill that at their cost. We did the work for them. It was an earn-in arrangement, but they've stepped away from that. Unfortunately, the holes didn't deliver what we were looking for. Right.
Okay. Not unusual. Okay. So let me try and work out what I'm buying into here, because it's as you say, you kind of reigniting an old story in a way. What type of company are you trying to be? Because you mentioned, you've got this one asset. It's a single asset company. You've got something down, exploration work down in Tasmania, and you've been looking around for gold assets as well. So I'm trying to work out what you're trying to be.
Sure. Look, ultimately, we want to be producing precious metals in the domestic space. That's our objective. I have two geologists on the board. I'm a mining engineer. Unfortunately, we've still got a couple of geologists in South Australia that have been through the evolution of the Paris Silver Project. So great team, great historical understanding. But as I said, we're looking to move forward into that development space, and that's really my background. I've been in the business 35 years, and mine operations and development is one of the things that get me up in the morning.
Right. So what should we look at? Are you a project generator, or are you an explorer? I mean, how far do you take this down the line before you kind of try and monetize
Yeah, look,
it?
probably more an acquirer to development and produce. We'd pretty much prefer to pick up a project that somebody's done some of those hard yards and that higher risk expenditure on. So part of the M&A space that we're looking at is advanced exploration pre-development projects.
As I say, you raised a bit of money in sort of end of July, beginning of August. A fair chunk of change to kind of move this forward. Is that all going to be spent on the Paris project?
Look, not at all. We raised $8 million, Matthew, in August. We also have another $7 million potentially coming from options that will be exercised before the end of this year. Interestingly, our major shareholder, Merian Capital, underwrote basically the placement, and they took half of that $8 million raising. Today, we announced that they exercised their options, put another $500,000 into the company. So, more than enough money to do the Paris job. That's sort of a $3 to $3.5 million spend in 12 months. And so we've got plenty of cash to lift ourselves into either the development of Paris or another project that's hungry for money.
Okay, so let's kind of break this down. Okay, so let's focus on Paris first, and we'll kind of deal with the other components in a second. So you're talking about $3 or $4 million to be spent on Paris. What's that going to allow you to do? I mean, obviously, you've got a resource number there, but then what? How do you create this value in this high silver environment that we're in?
Sure. So we need to improve the geological confidence. While there's a resource there, we need to move it into an indicated status that allows us to produce a reserve and have a financeable project. Every time we've gone back and drilled this project, or the previous guys have drilled it, been able to lift the grade by about 20% each time. And we are expecting that we're going to do this as we improve that confidence. So we'll end up with a better metrics associated with that project in Paris. The feasibility study will also complete the MET testing and all the other infrastructure design, the process plant costing. So we come out of this with a pre-feasibility study, fully costed, economics determined, and assuming that we have a better than $30 silver price in Australian terms, this project works.
Right. So looking through the material that you have produced, you talk about having the highest grade primary silver resource in Australia. That's a great headline, but it's about the size of the ore body. So what do you know today which lends you to believe that this is something that's going to be economic and meaningful?
Look, I suppose stepping aside just from that Paris footprint, we've got a 3 kilometre trend that hasn't been explored. Hasn't been drilled historically because there was some heritage clearance issues. Not problematic, it's just we hadn't gone and sought those clearances. We have over the last 18 months. We'll have a regional exploration program that we expect to see. We always have our fingers crossed. We're the greatest optimists around, and we'd like to see additional resource that can bulk up the Paris project. Paris on its own is a 7 to 10 year project. As I said, great economics at better than $30 Australian silver price.
So how do you take $3 or $4 million and create value? Like your shares have come back. You've kind of reignited this story. The silver market's done a lot of the heavy lifting for you. What are you going to do with your $3 or $4 million to actually take control of this and drive this forward to the potential that you see? I mean, how should I be looking at this project?
Look, I suppose 2 parts to that answer, Matthew. With a Scottish background, I'll spend the money frugally. But the other aspect of that is that, as I said, we have enough money to be able to lift this project into its next stage of development. People draw lots of curves about the value creation, and when you go through that uninteresting part where you're doing all the studies and no one wants to know about you, we won't have to raise money. We're able to just drive through that. As I said, it's not often you can say we've raised too much, but we did also, with almost consummate timing, pick the height of the silver price. Our shares did go to 6 cents. That was when we did that for a nanosecond. We did that placement then. We're well above placement price now. Lots of happy shareholders that are continuing to follow the story. Absolute pinpoint exposure to silver price, and that's why we do need to, been around long enough to know we have to have some diversification as well.
Okay, so let's stick with Paris. So what do we know today about what you've got, and what are you going to do to enhance that?
Sure. So One of the other challenges is always improving the metallurgical recovery. So we have some specific test work focused on one component of the resource that we know has a lower than average recovery, and we're going to see how we can tune that up. That's money for jam. If we can get another 5% recovery out of that, then it goes straight to the bottom line of the project. We expect that the resource grade will also lift. As I said, it has every time we've drilled it before, and there's some logic why that happens, because there's some high grade zones that haven't been spread wide, and as we infill, we'll be able to have those influence a greater part of the resource. As I said, we also have regional opportunity. There's 7 targets that we're going to drill in parallel with the program that we run in Paris, and that'll give us the opportunity to bring to the table other mineralisation in the district, all within certainly the order of sort of 6 or 7 kilometres.
Right, and again, I'm trying to work out whether this has got the scale to it. Again, what can you tell us about the ore body? Because I've been through the materials. Not a lot of material. There's not a lot of chat on the chat rooms about you guys. You're kind of slightly, unknown in that sense, that you're not kind of sharing with the market everything that you know. So I'm trying to work it out. So what's the ore body look like? Is this going to be? Is it shallow, deep? I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
The absence of news in the last couple of years has almost been by, well, I shouldn't say once, has been by design. Paris had been worked hard. It had been worked hard in the investment community. Every March it raised money. Investigator raised money to move the next year's program forward. And there was some investor fatigue. So when I first got involved, we said, we'll just park Paris until we have a very, very considered program, a costed program, and we'll be opportunistic about when we start to light the fire and get Paris back on, as you say, in the chat rooms. It's not a 100 million tonne resource, and as I said, this is about quality. It is the highest grade, and by far the highest grade silver project in Australia, and it starts to look like some of the South American silver projects, which are got great grades. We aren't relying on byproduct credits to get this thing over the line. We've got some lead in it, but that's not the thing that drives the economics.
I mean, do you think that's true? It's starting to look like some of the South American projects, because obviously, some amazing grades there, amazing scale to those things, and people are going to be looking towards South America rather than Australia, which people think of as gold. Are you getting the attention that you think you deserve?
Look, probably not, because Aussie investors are really spoiled for choice. You don't have to go too far to find a great gold story. And, people understand gold. It's a lot easier than silver, which generally comes with some complexity and other commodities. So, and look, there's quite a cyclic silver price. How long this run lasts for, well, look, we don't know what's going to go on in world politics, world economics, and in the next 2 to 5 years, let alone the next 2 to 5 months. So, everyone talks about stronger for longer, and I think gold and silver are certainly going to do that. Silver retraced its historical, a very high gold-silver ratio of 120 a while ago. We're back about 70 or 80 at the moment. I think it's probably still got some way to go to come back closer to historic average 50 or 60.
Wow. Okay. There's a number. Okay.
The other interesting thing, Matthew, in South America, you talk about it, is head grades there used to be 450. Over the last 10 years, those head grades have now come back to the likes of 250, which is starting to get into the space where Paris is.
True. Can I just talk about how you're thinking of Paris? You've given us your view of silver there, and you appreciate that gold's the sort of literally the golden child at the moment, and you are looking for gold projects. You've alluded to me. So is this just a stepping stone? Is Paris just a stepping stone to where you actually want to be playing, which is in the gold space?
Look, I think if we want to build a larger company in Australia, there are limited other silver opportunities. There's 3 or 4 key projects in Australia, where it's, as you well know, we're spoiled for choice in the gold space. Look, one of the things I love about operating gold mines, and I've spent 20, 25 years operating gold mines, is that nothing like seeing an investor's face when you pour a gold bar in front of them and you put it in their hands and they realise it's heavier than they thought. You can sell them as many shares as you want then, but But look, gold has that allure, and as I said, it's a great immediate response project where you don't have to worry about concentrate sales contracts and all the rest. You put it in the truck and it's gone to the mint, and it's a quick return. So look, I love the gold space. I suppose with the cadre gold operators around. So that's where we'd like to be. But as I said, in the current environment, it's pretty tough to find a high margin, cheap gold mine. But we'll find one. We'll elect one out of a bigger organisation that may not know it.
See, now we're getting into Angie. See, that makes sense to me, because with your track record of looking for gold, you're obviously very excited about the prospect of finding a cheap or relatively inexpensive gold asset. So, and from what you've said about the silver market being slightly erratic, so would it be fair to say that you've got this project, Paris is a reasonable silver project, but it's in Australia, much misunderstood by the retail in Australia and possibly even institutional. But if you can monetize it somehow, and at some point, you would use that money to develop either the polymetallic stuff in Tasmania or identify and acquire, or at least option, a gold project. Is that what you'd rather be doing?
Yeah, sure. Look, we're obviously some way away from having revenue stream that allows us to fund another acquisition out of our project. So what we'd be looking at is a scrip or a merger deal somewhere to bring another asset in. I sort of probably, I won't say flippantly, but I see Paris, it's a project I can see the end of it from where I am at the moment. It's got all the hallmarks of an economic project. We've got the plan and the team in place. So it's almost a bit like, you add water and the thing grows. Well, we've got the money to move it to the next stage. I've got a pretty good idea of how we'll finance it and what it'll take to do that. And that project's starting to move forward to, construction and commissioning in my mind. What's next? Because, as I said, it's great to be able to build other projects, and Paris will be a relatively straightforward operation for us.
Not a distraction.
Oh, look, there'll be bumps in the road and always some things that will challenge you, but that's one of its attributes. It's in an area in Australia that 90 minutes away from the highway that runs from the east to the west coast. It's a bit of a dirt road at the end of that near the project, but there's really no other challenges to development. There's very little flora and fauna of significance in the area. It's very poor pastoral country. We have a great relationship not only with pastoral owners, but also, importantly, the traditional owners in the district, and it's relatively impoverished. So bringing some work to the district will be well received. So we don't see the same permitting and development challenges that some of the other projects that might be closer to the eastern seaboard will see.
Okay, so where are you with the PFS then at the moment? You think you've got enough money to kind of get that completed?
Yeah, look, the PFS covers a range of aspects, right, both technical and social. So we think about $3 million will see us complete that in the next 8 months. And then that isn't a decision point from a financing perspective for us. It's just we can slide right into completing the DFS after that, and if we need to, because we have enough cash. So PFS is the technical aspects of mine resource, mine schedule, and planning, metallurgical recovery are things that we'll nail. A lot of the environmental benchmark work we've already done over the last 12 or 18 months. We've continued doing monitoring of water bores and things like that, which provide a baseline for any environmental study. So it won't take us a long time to get that completed.
Okay, so $3 million gets your PFS completed, and then it's onto the next stage. Are you kind of trying to accelerate this? Because again, I'm as a sort of investor looking into the silver market, and say I do think it has been erratic in the past, as history shows that. Do you feel that you've got to try and accelerate the process to take advantage of this positive environment that we're in right now? In terms of, can you shortcut the feasibility phase, for instance?
Look, we've got it squeezed up probably as much as we can. The rate determining step in that is, in fact, ironically, drying out the samples from the drilling, and that's weather dependent. So samples come out, there's a small water table associated, probably overstates it, but the ore body is damp. We bring that sample out before we can actually split it and send it off to assay. We have to dry it. So last week it rained, we haven't been able to dry. So that's just fate is going to give us that date. we actually can't start the mine planning work until we've got all that assay information back and the resource recalculated. So there's a point at which we can't accelerate. After that, look, I won't say just as much money as we need to throw at it, but it's a relatively straightforward 12-month build process. And then from when we decide to start construction, it's a simple open pit. It's within 120 metres of the surface. There's very little pre-stripping. So there's lots of ticks in the box for this thing.
Okay, but what I'm trying to understand is where the mindset of the management team is. Is there a deliberate and conscious decision that you've made, say, we need to accelerate this, we need to speed this process up?
Look, I'm sorry, you're probably asking me a question that just goes past me, because it goes without saying that, we're doing this and we've doubled the number of geos on site in the last week. We, as I said, one of the very fortunate times I've not been really cash constrained. As I said, I don't throw it away, but, we are able to bulk up because we've got the financial capacity to push forward. As I said, within the next 4 weeks, we'll have 3 drill rigs on site. So we'll be drilling both regional and both 2 other rigs on the Paris. So rather than eking that out over a period of time, we've got to get this resource done as quickly as we can, because that's the predetermining step for the next stage.
So are you nervous at all about this sort of environmental component? You talk about water tables there. That usually makes people a bit nervous in terms of getting permits, the necessary permits and licenses signed off. So what leads you to believe that you won't have any problems with that?
Look, I suppose a couple of things. We've done a little bit of some pre-work. It's not in a sensitive area. It's outside of the Artesian Basin and all those, some other places that might be more challenging. There's no pastoral areas that are reliant on bore water for their stock and so on. So I'm not saying that it's something we don't consider, but look, it's relatively straightforward. There's some other projects further west that we understand what happens with the water table there. And as I said, there's been some homework done already. So
okay, how do you go about identifying, what the potential red flags are for you, and mitigating those? I mean, so you must have to put out a few fires every day. So what are those?
Yeah. So look, in fact, we've engaged a guy who's just completed a pre-feasibility study for another project, not a metals project in South Australia. I don't want to give that away who or what he was doing, but he's just completed a PFS. We have a workshop with him next Wednesday. We're going to step through, okay, what are the pitfalls? Who did you use? How do we put the best team together? Make sure that we don't have to relearn any lessons here. So.
Okay. So you guys, I mean, I know you got a bit of money recently in August, but I mean, how do you guys remunerate yourselves? I mean, are you taking shares, options? You pay yourselves? I mean, what's it like down at the exploration stage?
Well, I've got to tell you that my take-home salary is the lowest I've had in 12 years here. So, I'm reliant on, I've got quite a structured option package and performance rights that are, if you got some time, I've got a matrix of 9 different things of time and delivery and all the rest, but it's all about shareholder value.
Okay.
So there's 3 steps in share price for my options to come on board. Delivery of project and so on are all the logical KPIs that push me. Look, I've been around for a long time. I still chair a small explorer, and I keep telling that guy about how much he gets paid and I don't. So look, in comparison to my peers, my remuneration, I'm 60 years old, and if I'm going to end up with enough forever, it's about the options coming into the money. So it's not about working for a wage by any means. So.
Okay. I would be interested in how you work those things out, but maybe offline, because I'm fascinated about how different companies approach that. So some people are there for a lifestyle, sucking money out of the company, and others are a bit more frugal, to use your word. Okay.
Well, no, not by any means. But look, that said, Matthew, it's all in our annual report, but I'll flick you over the detail.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Okay, should we bounce out of Australia into Tasmania? Because you've got a very early stage exploration target there. Can you tell us what you're up to, and how much money you're going to be spending on that, time, money, and effort?
Look, if I go back probably 6 or 8 years ago, I was running a small gold mining company called Unity Mining. Unity operated the Henty mine in Tasmania. It was the highest grade gold operation in Tasmania for many years, produced 1.5 million ounces. And look, and I suppose I started circling the wagons. I wanted to get back there at some stage. I actually, when I was the managing director of Unity, we sold that to private contract group. And great exploration ground, the only gold processing facility in that district, and I saw that as an opportunity for us. So we started sort of circling the wagons. I pitched to try and get back in to explore the ground around that mine. The mine is up for sale at the moment. So I leave that and we're interested in that process. We've also just picked up, as you said, some tenements which abut that ground with Henty. But also, interestingly, to the north has got the historic Rosebery lead zinc operation, which has run for 100 years. And I think there's some opportunities there. What drew us there was probably not a real mining engineering approach, but what we did was we engaged some geologists that undertake data review, big computing technology. They take every piece of data known to man. We said, look, focus in on the west coast of Tasmania and tell me what you think people haven't found. So go and find me another Rosebery or another Henty, and come up with a number of really interesting targets, one of them on ground that was vacant. We've acquired that ground under an exploration licence, but also gave us an insight to some of the other things in the district. And look, that would end up having to be some acquisition where we pick up maybe one of the existing or one of the other old mines in the district. So been no systematic and sophisticated exploration really in the west coast of Tasmania for decades.
Okay, so I mean, it's early days, but so coming back, so how much money are you going to be spending there? Over what period, and what's your expectation of what you want to be able to do there?
Yeah, sure. So look, we in making application for those exploration licenses, you have to propose a budget. So we've budgeted about $1.5 million over the next 3 years. That's our minimum commitment. So it's not a lot of money. Tasmania is a fairly challenging exploration environment, and look, having worked there, people used to say it's pretty simple. There are two seasons in Tasmania, February and winter. And you don't get a large window. It's not like being in the Arctic, I suppose, but it's a pretty challenging environment. It's quite undulating, and in some places you might need to lift a drill rig in with a helicopter, and you can't do that in 100-kilometre-hour winds. So as I said, it's baby steps there for us, but it's also about positioning ourselves in quite a well minerally endowed district, which has got a number of operating mines.
But I mean, how big are those mines? I mean, what do you liken yourself to there?
Oh, look, as I said, the Rosebery mine has been one of the more prominent, I suppose, Southern Hemisphere zinc producers over decades. Adjacent to that is the Renison tin mine, and as I said, next door to it is the Henty gold mine. All major producers in their history. But look, it's been a little bit tired and sad. People haven't spent much money on regional exploration. They've tried to sustain the mine life. And probably more historically is the Mount Lyell copper mine, which is further south. And it's been one of the significant copper producers in the world. Not like some of the Southern American, but certainly other mainland copper producing mines.
You didn't get us excited talking about that as you did when you talked about gold. So what else are you looking at?
Oh, look, I'm a gold bug, and I've got a little nugget here sitting on which just reminds me what it's about. But look, we have focused domestically, and so we've been hunting a number of projects. And look, interesting, we've been quite active in bidding on some things. I'd prefer not to be in a competitive bid environment. I'd prefer to negotiate a deal because at the end of the day, I'd like to see the other party get as much out of it as we possibly can as well. And so we've been the losing bidder on a couple of cracker opportunities, but I'm happy to say that we've still got our cash or our equity firepower, and the others I think probably paid too much. So we're okay. We'll find something.
And Merian Global Investments, I mean, they've just upped their stake to somewhere around 15-16%. Is that right? Or is it a bit more?
That's right. So Merian had been involved before I got involved in the company, but hadn't taken or participated in the last couple of placements, so had diluted down to under 10%. They stepped back in force in this last placement. They took half of that placement, took them up to about 15 or 16%, and in fact, just in the last day, exercised options that taken them closer to 17%. So in the last 3 months, they put $4.5 million into the company. They love the silver exposure. In fact, the fund that is out of the Merian Group is the Merian Gold and Silver Fund. So they're not interested in base metal opportunities necessarily, but certainly in the precious metal space.
And so why did they do that? Why have they kind of doubled down on this, having missed out the last couple of rounds? Is it because the silver environment's good, or is it a case of they think, crikey, if we don't, we're going to lose our money? I mean, what was the driver behind the decision for them getting involved?
Look, I won't repeat what their prediction for the silver price is, but they describe the activity in the future as getting fairly violent around our share price. They think silver is going to go hard. As I said, they took the foot off the gas a little bit because we did as well with the Paris project. As I said earlier, we sort of recognised the investor fatigue, so they sat out for a little while. When we lit the fire again under the Paris story, they were more than happy to jump back in because they love that and been very, very supportive. But as I said, they talk in sort of an embarrassing number. I'm happy to talk about $30 Australian silver. So.
Okay.
So embarrassingly good rather than embarrassingly good.
I was about to ask.
So they see this pinpoint silver opportunity, and similarly to the question you asked earlier, is that why or what the relative value between us and our peers in Australia, and so part of that is about even in fact this interview about rebuilding people's understanding of what we're about. Where Paris is going to be in the next 6, 12 and 18 months and further, and what's Investor going to do elsewhere.
Okay. Do you think you've got the scale or potential scale to be interesting to institutional at the moment? You've kind of got a lot of retail. Obviously, Merian are in there, but who else on the institutional side is paying attention to you?
Yeah, look, I suppose so we've changed brokers as well in this last placement to reach out because I don't want to name others that were interested. We actually kept a couple of institutions out because we were, and many people are saying that the demand was so high, but we went out to raise 3 to 5 million. We got offered over 20 and we took 8. And obviously people's expectations, if we had tried to do, divvy that up, there was very little. So there were a couple of institutions who said, look, if you can't give us enough, we'll be there next time. We'll come around later. But as I said, for us, we're a $50 or $60 million market cap company. As you say, we need to have a bit more weight behind us, or a bit more, bit higher valuation to be able to capture that institutional attention. So, it's a slow, hard process, which I know only too well as a managing director, to rebuild people's confidence and convince them that we're going to use their money wisely. But as I said, I'm sure we'll get there.
Okay, and obviously that's been a sort of recent occurrence, only in the last few months that people are, again, silver prices up, that people are paying attention to silver. How are you going to have to behave differently? Because you haven't been around for very long in this particular story, okay? But the story's been around for a while. How do you get the market to pay attention once again? I mean, what are the sorts of things that you are doing? Because roadshows are kind of dead now. It's all online. Are you relying on your broker?
And in fact, interestingly, I participated in the gold conference here virtually 6 weeks ago, and there were 900 people online. If I'd gone to the auditorium, there would have been 50. Three of them awake, the rest of them on their phones. The capacity to be able to project your story now, because people want to, they have the opportunity to attend a virtual conference, is different. But look, I suppose I've been around a little while. People know me; they understand that, and I think I've a reasonable sort of credibility. I've got a few scars, and people know where I got them from and why. But we've moved on. We're happy to move on. And as I said, I've never had trouble getting an audience with people when I talk to them about a development story.
Okay. Well, Thank you very much for telling us your story today. It's new to us and we've not spoken before. I'm intrigued to see how you go about delivering. Now you've got the capital to be able to kind of do things. Stay in touch and let us know how you get on, please.
Look, sure, Matthew, and everybody wants to know what's the news flow. Well, from probably next week until early next year, we're going to have reports coming out of this program, following up by what's this thing going to look like and how big is it and what's it worth when we complete the feasibility. So, we're going to have a bit of rage in the news market over the next 6 or 8 months. So, stay tuned.
That's a great phrase, a bit of rage.